Chapter 1. An Unusual Interview. The city of New Orion never slept. Hovercars streaked between gleaming skyscrapers, their neon underlights reflecting off glass towers that stretched endlessly into the sky. The streets below buzzed with a mix of humans and alien species, a cacophony of languages and cultures blending into the rhythmic hum of progress. In this glittering hub of intergalactic trade and technology, Ethan Hayes was struggling to keep his startup alive. Omnicore Systems had started as a Dream A logistics software company designed to bridge gaps between human colonies and alien worlds. Ethan, an ambitious but overworked entrepreneur in his early 30s, had poured his heart, soul, and every last credit into the venture. His small office, nestled on the 47th floor of a nondescript tower in the West District, was cluttered with monitors, holographic displays, and stacks of physical papers, a rarity in an era dominated by digital storage. But Omnicore had a problem: too much work and not enough manpower. Ethan had been juggling roles as programmer, salesman, and administrator, and the stress was beginning to show. His once trim desk was buried under invoices, contracts, and unopened client messages demanding updates on software that was still in development. Worse, his primary investor was threatening to pull out if he missed another milestone. It was clear he couldn't do this alone anymore. The search for help. "All right, let's see who we've got," Ethan muttered to himself, scrolling through a holographic list of resumes projected above his desk. The interface glowed softly, lighting up his tired face as he sifted through the applicants. Most were competent but uninspiring recent graduates with little experience, seasoned administrators with cookie-cutter credentials, or overconfident freelancers looking for an easy paycheck. Then, one application caught his eye. The name was unfamiliar, and so was the species. Zalara Vestari, Zendari. Ethan leaned closer, tapping on her profile. Her image appeared: an alien woman with smooth lavender skin and piercing golden eyes that seemed to look right through him, even in the still image. Her resume was just as striking. Telepathic abilities. Fluent in 14 languages, including Galactic Trade Standard and Xandran Protocol. Master's degree in interstellar commerce from the Veltran Institute. Proficiency in advanced coding frameworks for human and alien systems. Previous experience managing cross-species teams. Telepathic abilities? Ethan raised an eyebrow. Okay, that's different. He tapped the intercom on his desk. "Kara, could you send a message to Zalara Vestari? Let her know I'd like to schedule an interview." The automated assistant chimed in response. Message sent. Interview confirmed for tomorrow at 10 a.m. The interview. The next morning, Ethan arrived at the office early, hoping to prepare for what promised to be an unusual meeting. He tidied his desk as best he could, shoving the stacks of papers into drawers and wiping a coffee ring off the surface. Despite his best efforts, the office still looked like the workspace of an overwhelmed entrepreneur clinging to control by his fingernails. The clock struck 10, and a soft chime signaled the arrival of his next interviewee. Ethan adjusted his tie, his nerves creeping in as he stood to greet her. The door slid open, and in walked Zalara. She was taller than he expected, nearly 6 feet, with a graceful posture that made her seem even taller. Her lavender skin shimmered faintly under the artificial lights, and her golden eyes glowed with an intensity that was almost hypnotic. She wore a tailored suit that blended alien and human aesthetic, sharp lines and subtle textures that exuded professionalism. "Mr. Hayes," she said, her voice smooth and melodic, with a faint accent that gave her words an intriguing rhythm. "Thank you for considering my application." Ethan cleared his throat, gesturing toward the chair across from his desk. "Of course. Thanks for coming. Please, have a seat." As she moved to sit, Ethan caught a faint scent, something floral and unfamiliar, not overpowering but distinctly alien. It only added to her otherworldly presence, which filled the room in a way that was both intimidating and captivating. The interview began with the usual pleasantries. Ethan asked about her background, her education, and her experience working with interspecies teams. Her answers were precise, thoughtful, and occasionally peppered with dry humor that caught him off guard. The telepathic twist. Then came the moment Ethan had been curious and apprehensive about. Your resume mentions telepathic abilities, he said, leaning forward slightly. How does that work in a professional setting? Zalara's lips curved into a small smile. Telepathy is often misunderstood, she said. It's not mind reading, as many believe. I don't hear thoughts. It's more like sensing intent and emotional undercurrents. It helps me anticipate needs, diffuse conflicts, and understand people even when words fail. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Sounds useful, but also a little invasive. What's stopping you from, say, figuring out exactly what I'm thinking right now? Her golden eyes sparkled with amusement. Professional ethics, for one. And telepathy doesn't work like that. Thoughts are complex, layered. I sense emotions more than details. For example, she tilted her head slightly. Right now, you're curious but cautious. You're intrigued by my skills, but uncertain about how I'd fit into your team. Ethan blinked, his skepticism melting into a mix of surprise and grudging admiration. Okay, that's accurate. I assure you, she said, her tone softening. I respect boundaries. If hired, my abilities would be used solely to enhance efficiency and foster collaboration. Nothing more. Ethan nodded, impressed despite himself. Fair enough. Let's talk logistics. The job involves managing schedules, client communication, and overseeing the development pipeline. Are you comfortable juggling multiple roles? I thrive on multitasking, Zalara replied, and I'm confident I can adapt to your systems quickly. I've worked with human and alien software before, so your tools should pose no issue. Ethan leaned back in his chair, weighing his options. Zalara's qualifications were beyond anything he'd seen. She was overqualified, really, but that wasn't a bad thing. The question wasn't whether she could handle the job, it was whether he could afford to let her walk out the door without hiring her. After a moment of silence, he extended his hand. Welcome to Omnicore Systems, Zalara. Let's see what you've got. She stood, her movements fluid, and clasped his hand in hers. Thank you, Mr. Hayes. I won't disappoint you. The first day. Zalara's first day at Omnicore was nothing short of transformative. Within hours, she had reorganized Ethan's chaotic schedule, responded to a dozen client inquiries, and streamlined the company's project management system. Her telepathic abilities became evident in subtle ways, anticipating Ethan's questions before he asked them, defusing a tense client call with perfect timing, and even retrieving a misplaced file without being told where to look. By the end of the day, Ethan was equal parts relieved and awed. For the first time in months, he felt like the company might actually survive. As he prepared to leave the office, he passed Zalara's desk, where she was still typing with inhuman precision. You don't have to stay late, he said. You've already done more today than I expected. She looked up, her golden eyes meeting his. Thank you, Mr. Hayes, but I prefer to finish what I start. Besides, I enjoy the work. Ethan smiled, shaking his head. All right, but don't let me overwork you. Even telepaths need breaks. Zalara's lips curved into a faint smile, but there was something unreadable in her expression, something that hinted at depths Ethan couldn't begin to understand. As he left the office, he couldn't shake the feeling that hiring Zalara might have been the best decision he'd ever made. But he also couldn't shake the sense that it was only the beginning of something far more unexpected. Chapter 2. The Unraveling Mystery. Zalara Vestari had been working at Omnicore Systems for just a week, but her impact was already undeniable. What had once been a floundering startup on the brink of collapse now hummed with newfound efficiency. Ethan Hayes could hardly believe how much easier his life had become since hiring her. She wasn't just good at her job, she was extraordinary. Every project was on schedule. Client satisfaction was at an all-time high. And Ethan, for the first time in months, wasn't waking up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat over deadlines. Zalara had everything under control, seemingly without breaking a sweat. But as remarkable as she was, there was something about her that Ethan couldn't quite put his finger on. She was polite, professional, and eerily calm, always calm. Even when things didn't go as planned, she maintained an unshakable composure that bordered on unnerving. And while Ethan had appreciated her telepathic abilities during the interview, he was beginning to wonder if there was more to her than she let on. The first glitch. The first sign of something unusual came on a Thursday afternoon. Ethan was in his office reviewing the quarterly financial reports Alara had prepared. As always, it was impeccable, every figure double-checked, every projection meticulously calculated. But as he scrolled through the data, the screen flickered for a moment, lines of alien script flashing across the holographic display before disappearing. "Zalara?" Ethan called, leaning out of his office. She appeared almost instantly, as if she'd been waiting just outside the door. "Yes, Mr. Hayes?" "Something weird just happened with the financial report," he said, gesturing to the screen. "Looked like some kind of alien text?" Zalara stepped forward, her golden eyes narrowing as she examined the display. "That's unusual," she said, her tone measured. "May I?" "Of course," Ethan said, stepping aside. She placed her hand over the console, her lavender fingers glowing faintly as she interacted with the system. The screen flickered again, and the alien text reappeared for a brief moment before vanishing once more. "It's nothing to worry about," Zalara said, straightening. "A minor glitch in the software. I'll patch it immediately." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "You recognized that text, didn't you? What was it?" She hesitated, her usually confident demeanor faltering for the first time. "It's Zendari code. Likely a remnant from one of the programs I integrated earlier this week. I'll ensure it doesn't happen again." Ethan frowned but nodded. "All right. Thanks for handling it." As she left the room, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't telling him the whole truth. The investor meeting. The next day, Omnicore hosted a critical meeting with its primary investor, a no-nonsense businessman named Victor Drell. Drell was known for being impatient and demanding, and Ethan had been dreading the meeting all week. But with Zalara by his side, he felt cautiously optimistic. Drell arrived on time, his sharp suit and piercing gaze cutting through the room like a blade. He wasted no time getting to the point. "Hayes," he said, sitting across from Ethan in the conference room, "I've been hearing some promising things about your company lately, but talk is cheap. Show me the numbers." Ethan started to speak, but Zalara beat him to it. "Mr. Drell," she said, her voice smooth and commanding, "Omnicore's performance has improved significantly over the past month. Allow me to present the data." With a wave of her hand, she activated the holographic display, seamlessly walking Drell through the company's progress. Her explanations were precise, her confidence unshakable. Even Drell, who was notoriously difficult to impress, seemed captivated. As the presentation continued, Ethan couldn't help but marvel at her. It wasn't just her intelligence or her poise, it was the way she seemed to anticipate every question, every objection, before Drell even voiced it. It was almost as if she were reading his mind. By the end of the meeting, Drell was nodding approvingly. "Impressive," he said, standing to shake Ethan's hand. "Keep this up, and Omnicore might just turn into something worth talking about." As Drell left, Ethan turned to Zalara, his expression one of genuine gratitude. "You were amazing in there. I don't know how you do it." She smiled faintly. "It's my job, Mr. Hayes. I'm glad I could assist." But as she returned to her desk, Ethan noticed something unusual. Her hands were trembling. A hidden message. Later that evening, long after Zalara had gone home, Ethan stayed late at the office. He couldn't stop thinking about the glitch in the financial report or the strange way Zalara had reacted during the meeting. There was something she wasn't telling him, and he was determined to find out what. He accessed the system logs, searching for any traces of the alien code he had seen earlier. At first, there was nothing, just the standard data streams. But then he found it, a small, encrypted file buried deep in the system. The file name was in Zendari script, but Ethan recognized part of it as Zalara's name. "What are you hiding, Zalara?" he muttered, opening the file. The screen filled with lines of alien text, incomprehensible to him. But as he stared at it, the text began to shift, rearranging itself into something he could understand. Message start. "To whomever finds this, if you are reading these words, I need your help. My life depends on it. Please trust me, even if I cannot explain everything yet. Time is running out." Message end. Ethan's blood ran cold. The message was brief, but its implications were clear. Zalara wasn't just an overqualified secretary. She was in trouble, and whatever she was hiding, it was bigger than he could have imagined. confrontation. The next morning, Ethan waited for Zalara to arrive. As soon as she walked into the office, he closed the door behind her, his expression serious. "Zalara," he said, holding up a datapad. "What is this?" Her golden eyes widened slightly as she saw the file on the screen. For the first time since he'd met her, she looked genuinely afraid. "Mr. Hayes," she began, her voice unsteady. "I can explain dash." "Then start explaining," Ethan interrupted. "What's going on? Why are you really here?" She hesitated, her gaze dropping to the floor. "I didn't come here just for the job," she admitted. "I came here to hide." "Hide from what?" "From them," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The Zendari Council. I defected, Mr. Hayes. I couldn't support their methods anymore, but they don't tolerate defectors. If they find me—" She trailed off, her fear palpable. Ethan stared at her, processing the revelation. "So you're on the run? And you used my company as a cover?" "Yes," she said, meeting his gaze. "But I swear, I never intended to endanger you. I thought I could stay hidden, that they wouldn't find me here. But now, I'm not so sure." Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Why didn't you just tell me?" "Because I didn't know if I could trust you," she said. "But now, I have no choice. If they come for me, I'll leave immediately. I won't let them hurt you or Omnicore." Ethan studied her for a long moment before nodding. "We'll figure this out," he said. "But next time, no secrets. Got it?" She smiled faintly, her golden eyes shimmering with gratitude. "Got it." The unexpected revelation set the stage for a much larger conflict, one that would test the limits of trust, loyalty, and survival. Chapter 3. The Shadow of the Council. The revelation that Zalara was a fugitive from the Zendari Council left Ethan reeling. He had hired her to fix his company, not drag him into an intergalactic conspiracy. Yet, as he sat in his office the next morning, staring at her empty desk, he couldn't shake the image of her trembling hands and frightened eyes. He thought about the message buried in his system, her quiet plea for trust. Ethan Hayes was not a hero. He was a businessman, a struggling one at that. But something about Zalara's plight tugged at him. She wasn't just an employee. She was a person running for her life. As he pondered his next move, the building's security system chimed. Ethan glanced at his datapad. Someone had accessed the lobby with a forged ID. His stomach tightened. "They found her," he muttered. An unwelcome visit. The door to his office slid open before he could lock it. 3 figures stepped inside, their presence commanding and menacing. They were Zendari, like Zalara, but their lavender skin was darker, their gold eyes colder. Each wore sleek black uniforms adorned with the insignia of the Zendari Council. The tallest among them, a male with a scar running down his cheek, stepped forward. "Mr. Hayes," he said, his voice smooth but dangerous. "I am Commander Vorthan. We're here for Zalara Vestari." Ethan kept his expression neutral, though his mind raced. "Zalara? She didn't show up today. Sick, I think. What's this about?" Vorthan's eyes narrowed, as if dissecting Ethan's lie. "She is a criminal, Mr. Hayes. A traitor to the Zendari Council. She's been using your company as a cover to evade justice. Turn her over, and we'll ensure your business remains unscathed." Ethan swallowed, his palms sweating. "Like I said, she's not here." Vorthan's lips curved into a cold smile. "Lying to the council is unwise, human. We have ways of finding the truth." The second Zendari, a lithe woman with cruel eyes, raised her hand. A strange energy shimmered between her fingers, and Ethan felt a sharp pressure in his head. "Stop!" Zalara's voice rang out as she entered the room. Ethan turned, his heart sinking as he saw her. She was composed but visibly tense, her golden eyes blazing with defiance. "I'll go with you," she said, her voice steady. "But leave him out of this." Vorthan's smile widened. "Wise choice." The escape plan. As the Zendari escorted Zalara out of the office, Ethan's mind raced. He couldn't just let them take her. Whatever she had done, she didn't deserve to be handed over to a council that hunted its own people with such ruthlessness. Grabbing his datapad, Ethan accessed Omnicore's security system. He had installed some hidden features when he first set up the office, including lockdown protocols. He tapped the override command. The lights flickered, and a loud clang echoed through the building as the doors sealed. Vorthan and his team froze, their expressions darkening. "What is this?" Vorthan demanded. Zalara turned to Ethan, her eyes wide with disbelief. "What are you doing?" "Buying us some time," Ethan said, stepping out from behind his desk. "If they want you, they'll have to get through me." The Zendari agents reacted instantly. The woman raised her hand again, the shimmering energy forming into a projectile. Ethan ducked as it shot past him, searing a hole in the wall. "Move!" he shouted to Zalara, grabbing her arm and pulling her toward the emergency exit. A desperate run. The corridors of the office building were eerily quiet, the lockdown cutting off all outside noise. As Ethan and Zalara ran, the distant sound of the agent's footsteps echoed behind them. "You shouldn't have done this," Zalara said breathlessly. "They won't stop now. Not until we're both dead." "Then we make sure they don't catch us," Ethan replied, his voice grim. They reached the stairwell and began descending, their footsteps echoing in the narrow space. Halfway down, a blast rocked the building, shaking the walls. Ethan stumbled, catching himself against the railing. "They're breaking through," Zalara said, her tone urgent. "We need to move faster." The turning point. Reaching the parking level, Ethan led Zalara to his hovercar, a battered but reliable model he used for city commutes. They climbed in, and Ethan gunned the engine, the vehicle lurching forward as it sped toward the exit. The Zendari agents emerged from the stairwell just as the hovercar shot out onto the street. Vorthan raised his arm, a small device in his hand. A glowing pulse shot out, striking the rear of the hovercar. Sparks flew as the vehicle's stabilizers faltered, causing it to swerve wildly. "Hang on," Ethan shouted, gripping the controls. Zalara's hands glowed faintly as she pressed them against the dashboard. The car steadied, the damaged systems briefly restored by her energy. "How did you dash?" Ethan began. "No time," she interrupted. "Just drive." The chase that followed was nothing short of chaotic. The Zendari agents pursued them in a sleek, black craft, its advanced systems far outmatching Ethan's hovercar. Plasma bolts streaked through the air, narrowly missing their vehicle as Ethan weaved through the crowded streets of New Orion. Zalara leaned out of the window, her hands glowing brighter as she unleashed a pulse of energy. The pursuing craft wavered, its systems momentarily disrupted, but it quickly recovered. "They're too strong," she said, frustration clear in her voice. "We can't outrun them." "Then we don't," Ethan said, his jaw set. "We outsmart them." The unexpected twist. Ethan guided the hovercar into a narrow alley, its walls lined with old infrastructure conduits. He slammed on the brakes, bringing the car to a sudden stop. "What are you doing?" Zalara asked, her voice panicked. "Trust me," Ethan said, reaching into the glove compartment and pulling out a small device, a signal jammer he had used during his time as a freelance engineer. "This will buy us a few minutes." As the Zendari craft entered the alley, Ethan activated the jammer. The pursuing vehicle shuddered and dropped to the ground, its systems fried. Zalara stared at Ethan, her expression a mix of disbelief and admiration. "You're full of surprises." Ethan grinned. "I could say the same about you." Their moment of triumph was short-lived. The Zendari agents emerged from the disabled craft, their weapons drawn. Ethan and Zalara had nowhere left to run. "I'll hold them off," Zalara said, stepping forward. "You get out of here." "Not a chance," Ethan replied, stepping in front of her. "We face this together." The agents closed in, their expressions cold and unyielding. But just as all seemed lost, a blinding light filled the alley. A second Zendari ship descended, its markings different from the council craft. The agents froze, their expressions shifting to shock. "It's them," Zalara whispered. "Who?" Ethan asked. Before she could answer, the new ship's hatch opened, and a group of Zendari stepped out. Unlike the agents, their demeanor was calm, almost regal. Their leader, a tall male with silver markings, addressed Zalara directly. "You are safe now," he said. "We've come to take you home." Chapter 4. revelations and resolutions. The alley was bathed in an ethereal glow as the second Zendari ship descended. Its sleek, crystalline hull reflected the light from the neon-lit streets of New Orion, casting strange patterns on the walls. Ethan stood frozen, his pulse racing as a group of Zendari disembarked. Unlike the Council agents, these newcomers moved with calm precision, their silver markings shimmering against their lavender skin. Their presence exuded authority, but it was a different kind, less aggressive, more resolute. Zalara's posture relaxed, though her expression remained wary. "Your resistance," she murmured, her voice tinged with both relief and caution. The leader, a tall male with intricate markings running along his temples, stepped forward. "We received your distress signal, Zalara Vestari," he said, his tone steady. "You've done well to evade the Council this long, but your fight is over. You're under our protection now." The Council agents, led by Commander Vorthan, stiffened. "This is Council jurisdiction," Vorthan growled, his cold eyes narrowing. "The traitor belongs to us. Stand down." The resistance leader didn't flinch. "Zalara belongs to no one," he said firmly. "You've overstepped your authority, Vorthan. Leave, or we'll make you." Tension crackled in the air as both sides squared off. Ethan, caught in the middle, glanced at Zalara. "Care to fill me in on what's happening?" She hesitated before answering. "The Zendari resistance is fighting to overthrow the Council," she said softly. "They're trying to build a future where telepaths like me aren't tools for manipulation and control. I sent them a signal weeks ago, but I didn't think they'd find me in time." Ethan nodded, his mind racing. The situation was rapidly spiraling into a conflict far beyond anything he had anticipated. He wasn't just protecting an employee anymore, he was entangled in an intergalactic rebellion. The standoff. Commander Vorthan raised his weapon, his voice laced with venom. "The Council will not tolerate interference. Step aside." The resistance leader extended a hand, and a shimmering barrier of energy formed between the two groups. "You're outnumbered, Vorthan. Leave before this escalates." The agents exchanged glances, their resolve faltering. Vorthan clenched his jaw, then gestured for his team to retreat. "This isn't over," he snarled, backing toward his ship. "The Council doesn't forget." As the Council craft ascended into the sky, Ethan exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. That was tense. The resistance leader turned to Zalara. "Are you injured?" "I'm fine," she said, though her voice wavered. "But I didn't expect to involve him." She gestured toward Ethan. The leader's golden eyes shifted to Ethan, studying him with quiet curiosity. "You're human. Why did you risk yourself for her?" Ethan shrugged, his tone laced with sarcasm. "She's the best employee I've ever had. Can't afford to lose her." Zalara let out a soft laugh despite the tension, but the resistance leader remained serious. "Humans rarely intervene in our conflicts. Your actions are unusual." Ethan crossed his arms. "Yeah, well, I'm not a fan of bullies. And Zalara doesn't deserve what the Council's doing to her." The leader inclined his head. "Your loyalty is commendable. Perhaps you have a place in this fight after all." The truth about Zalara. Back aboard the resistance ship, Ethan and Zalara were escorted to a quiet chamber. The walls pulsed faintly with light, the organic metallic design giving the space an otherworldly feel. The resistance leader introduced himself as Kale, a high-ranking operative within the movement. "Zalara," Kale said, his voice gentle, "you've sacrificed much to join our cause. But the information you carry is invaluable. The Council's plans for expanded telepathic control could enslave countless worlds. What you've done, it could change everything." Ethan looked at Zalara, his brow furrowing. "Wait, what information?" Zalara sighed, her shoulders slumping. "When I worked for the Council, I uncovered their project to weaponize telepathy. They're developing a neural network that could link telepaths across the galaxy, forcing us to act as one hive mind. It would give them unprecedented control over entire civilizations." Ethan's stomach turned. "That's horrifying." "It's why I left," Zalara said, her voice shaking. "I couldn't be part of it. But leaving wasn't enough. I stole the schematics for the network, hoping to get them to the resistance. That's why they're hunting me. Kale nodded. The data you carry is the key to dismantling the network before it goes online. But it also makes you the Council's top target. Ethan leaned back, running a hand through his hair. So what happens now? We go into hiding, Kale said, and we prepare for war. A new beginning. The following days were a blur of activity. Zalara was integrated into the Resistance's ranks, her knowledge and skills invaluable to their efforts. Ethan, to his surprise, found himself involved as well. His technical expertise and problem-solving abilities made him an asset, and he quickly became part of the team. As they worked together, Ethan and Zalara grew closer. What had started as a professional relationship evolved into a deep friendship built on mutual respect and trust. Ethan admired Zalara's courage and resilience, while she was grateful for his unwavering support. One evening, as they stood on the observation deck of the Resistance ship, staring out at the stars, Ethan broke the silence. You know, when I hired you, I thought you'd just fix my company. I didn't think you'd drag me into an intergalactic rebellion. Zalara smiled, her golden eyes reflecting the starlight. I didn't think you'd risk your life for me. Guess we're both full of surprises, he said, grinning. She nodded, her expression softening. Thank you, Ethan. For everything. He shrugged. What are friends for? As the Resistance ship prepared to jump to a hidden base, Ethan realized that his life had changed forever. He wasn't just a struggling entrepreneur anymore. He was part of something bigger. And for the first time in years, he felt like he was exactly where he was meant to be.